If you go to Japan, you'll see words such as lonely, isolated being used to describe the Japanese society, amongst obviously other positive words. But if you go to European societies or if you go to America, you would notice that a different idea of individualism is perceived there. Like, there appears to be some difference in the definition of individual or how societies are organized. Now, the idea of individualism basically refers to how a individual in the society or in a community has the ability to pursue their own individual self-interest or achieve their own ambitions or whatever they want to in a society, regardless of what the collective sort of thinks or perceives or wants to achieve. So basically, the individual is the paramount importance in a individual society as opposed to collective. Now, in collective democracies, you will still see the actions of, like, the individual still earns individually. He goes to companies. Yes, he takes up his own careers and stuff. But then again, a question that comes up is, what exactly is individualism? Why and how did this came about? And how did it spread to Eastern countries? And how is it being, like, sort of being celebrated across the world, like not just in Western countries? And why are, sort of, at least in some countries, like some Asian countries, American, or like sort of the idea of individual is celebrated across the world? And how did it came across? How do these different societies describe or define individualism, which is also different in Europe and America, by the way? Although yes, the fundamental definition of individualism is the same, is that every individual can go and perceive their own ambitions, there still seems to be a confusion in this space. So in this video, we'll be talking about these things. Okay, so let's talk about what brought about individualism. We actually talked about, we touched upon individualism in another video called Modernism. Now, modernism is the movement that gave birth to individualism. So modernism is the age of enlightenment, or modernism is also known as the age of structuralism. And basically it's the movement towards attaining, let's say, progress or a meaning by using modern ideas, tools, and technologies. Obviously, modernism came across. Came about as a result of industrial revolution, information revolution, like internet and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that happened as a result of all these movements was the birth of globalization, especially due to the internet. Now, globalization basically refers to where one culture influences the other culture while doing trade or while they're exchanging values. Okay, when I say values, they can exchange through different means. Like, okay, let's say for example you want to date somebody. Okay, well, before dating, you obviously, one of the ways people do is people from one culture travel to another country. They do business, and then what they do is, like, yes, some individuals go to other places to study, like myself, and yeah, so or on the internet, you're basically it's not so strange these days, even for, let's say, people in some remote part of India to have a friend in some remote part of Mexico. Like, I mean, there are a lot of platforms today which allow you to communicate with strangers, and even for people who are not so techy, have a lot of people, like friends across the globe, like people whom they have never met. And that's a hint, or sort of, that's a, let's say, a clue that a globalization has sort of taken over the world and it has become mainstream. So as a result of, exchange of values, people discovered like sort of different cultures, and people started, like, the Americans started learning about the East, the East started learning about the Western values, and so on and so forth. Now, in the exchange of values, one thing that the Eastern sort of the side of the planet sort of discovered is that Western societies are not sort of very easy to understand, because individualism is like the idea of individual is more complicated to understand or complex to understand than the idea of collective, because if you learn about cultures, it's sort of, if you organize yourselves under like one central identity, and we'll talk about what I really mean by that. Now, yes, even in individualistic societies people have groups, but in collective societies, it's sort of difficult to understand the motivations of the Western society, because it's sort of like, okay, everybody seems to have their own idea of how this world works or how it should work, own ideas of utopia. Everybody seems to be working on their own thing. So, so when this sort of thing started, the idea on the like people on the East found it sort of like, it's sort of strange and sort of like, let's say, interesting in a lot of ways. So that's how the individual values started spreading across different parts of the planet, and it's being celebrated not just in the West but also in Eastern and let's say the South part of this planet as well, like South, North, everywhere. So Western values have become like sort of the, let's say, the standard in many democracies across the world. So the question that comes up is, okay, what is the, like, okay, so how does this come across, and is this good or bad, and so on and so forth. So first, let's talk about what is the impact of the spread of individualism. If you take the example of Japan, now Japan is a part of Asia, is very much a part of Asia, and it's still, to this day, I would say that Japan still believes in, like the idea of moving towards the collective good of everybody, like the social, like, it's not really right to like sort of call Japanese societies as 100% individualistic societies, because they're not, like, although yes, a lot of people, like, if you see, as a result of globalization, one of the things that has happened is you can notice not just in the arts or in the cultures, but in the Japanese sort of society, you'll also notice a lot of English words being tossed in between. Not just that, but you'll also notice that the idea of individualism is not to be unique or to pursue their own individual ambitions as it is in the West. Now, in the West, the West is the idea. West is the place where the individualism, the concept, took its birth. But the concept of individualism only recently started in Japan, so it's relatively new to Japanese societies. Now, so as a result, the idea of individualism, as it's traveled so far into Japan, the idea of individual in Japan is really different. In Japan, the idea of individualism is not just to be able to pursue your own individual ambitions or whatever you want to do, but it's also to be more independent, or organize yourselves as being completely self-reliant or not so interdependent on other people. Okay, now what does that really mean? If you look at the Western societies, yes, every individual is entitled to their own opinions, own worldviews, and so on and so forth. Like, everybody has their own rights to achieve whatever they want. Yes, but there are terms and conditions. Yes, it's a movement that came about as a result of modernism, and modernism or structuralism is not exactly relativism or postmodernism, which we also talked about. I would suggest you to check both those videos out if you haven't, and then come back to this video because it might be a little confusing to understand. Alright, so basically the idea of modernism still has the idea of truth or one common meaning, which means that everybody has to strive towards a common goal. Like, not exactly like everybody have to do one thing, but everybody have to strive towards progress. Now, that's a pursuit, that's not the destination, just so that's clear. All right, so that's the idea of individualism. But in Japan, so in Europe, you will still notice that although everybody are organized as individuals, the individuals still rely on, like, not rely, but I would say they still need each other, because what they have done is, now that's how, the idea of marriages are sort of falling out, and like in especially in the Europe, because individual privacy, the idea of individual liberties in Europe is paramount. Therefore, every individual has the right to choose whatever he or she wants. Now, if you don't like the person, you're not bounded by any contract or any legal legislation, unless and of course you sign up for it. But unless and of course you do it, and even if you do it, you still have different like sort of rules to get out of it, because again, it's an individualistic society. So in individual societies, because sort of the individual is the paramount, you have the right to do whatever you want. Now, in Japanese individualism, people perceive themselves as people that do not need to depend on other people for their own, let's say happiness, if that makes sense. Now, yes, even in Western societies, people do say that we don't need to depend on other people for our own happiness. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I don't, because you still need other people for your own happiness, because it's not just about business or about other things, but when you buy anything, like it's a complex idea. We also talked about systems thinking in a different video. Now in this over here, I'm getting into my opinionated stuff, but yeah. So in the systems thinking, we talked about how every individual is connected, regardless of whether or not you approve of it or whether you think that's important or not. You're still connected to the society. Okay, so let's continue along. Now, in Japanese societies, that's why the dating culture is sort of difficult in Japan, because every individual sort of believes that the idea that everybody has to be self-reliant is extremely paramount important. Then in let's say in Western cultures, where dating definitely does take place, like people still meet each other, but there's the idea that yes, you are not bounded by any contract. I'm not bounded by any contract. Therefore, the idea of casual sex and so on and so forth prevails in Western societies. Now, it might look like from the tone I'm sort of propagating any idea. I'm at least not yet. I'm not saying any. I'm only describing what I understand and what I've learned so far. Okay. All right. So the idea of American individualism is slightly different from Europe. Okay, I think Japan is sort of clear at this point, right? Like, we'll revisit individualism as a whole and it will make more sense. But as of right now, let's put Japan aside for a minute. And let's come to America. So in America also, was obviously in the West is the place where the idea of individualism took place. But the difference between America and the Europe is one of the reasons why they differ is due to the existence of one thing called the social welfare system, or the United Nations. European Union. All right, so European Union basically is a union, or it's an organization that takes responsibility for the preservation of the rights of the European countries, basically to provide and sustain European cultures and societies, right? So the idea of European individualism is, yes, that you have the right to pursue whatever you want, but you still need to work towards the stability. There's a there's a move towards stability. There's a move towards making sure that if you go to European cities, and if you visit these cultures, and if you visit these countries, you will notice a lot of buildings and the cityscapes, and the city looks they have a city language, right? If you take a photo of somewhere in Switzerland or in Sweden, and if you visited these countries, it's sort of very easy to say that this photo comes from Switzerland or Sweden. If you go to India, yes, you can still say that, but there's a sort of a standard being established in European Union, okay, which means that there is a sense of egalitarianism in European, which is that there is a sense of this what is called as the equality, the sense of equality in Europe compared to America. So what America sort of suggests is that okay, every individual will have the right to pursue whatever he wants, regardless of where we stand in the society, whatever he wants. So the individual liberty takes the paramount importance, and even as opposed to okay, making sure that every individual has equal outcome. Now there are two concepts called equality of opportunity, which is that everybody should have the right to do whatever they want in a society or in a at a time. Like everybody has the right to do whatever they want, or the other option or the other thing is equality of outcome, which or equality equality of outcome, which is the idea that every individual every individual in the society should get the same, or everybody should get a piece of the pie in a society, so people don't go into poverty or anything like that. Everybody is in the level. Now you would say, isn't that a good idea, like to bring everybody to the equal thing? Well, the reason why the American liberals or the American, like, let's say libertarians sort of argue is that, well, if you bring the reason why the right wing, or sort of not just the right wing, but if you talk about the economic policies in the libertarian side and the right wing side, which are the same, like libertarians is also, you might have, like, especially for the East, like for the people in the Asian subcontinent, people may know about Democrats and Republicans, but there also exists a third side, which is called libertarians. And libertarians are basically, they're not left or right. They're more towards, okay, everybody has their own ideas, so they should be living according to how they want. Therefore, individual liberties, again, it's more a movement towards, let's say, anarchy, but it's not like there are libertarians who don't believe in anarchy, and libertarians who believe in anarchy. But anarchy basically is a system where there is no government or no sort of upper organization or upper control, if that makes sense. So so basically libertarians exist. Now the idea of what the thing that what libertarians sort of say is that if you put everybody in the same piece of, if you put everybody in the same society, that's called socialism, where one of the things that happens is that the rich people are not, like, sort of incentivized for being rich. Everybody in a capitalistic society, everybody comes to the top. Yes, poor get poor and rich gets rich, which is the most common criticism of capitalistic society. It is obviously capitalism is flawed in many ways. But it's also a system that has being least successful in the last couple of years. So it's at least better than it's produced, like, better results, I guess, than socialism or communism. So one of the things that has happened as a result of, let's say, as a result of capitalism, I'll visit that point in a minute, is that every individual will like, okay, so what happens when the rich gets to the top? Now the poor and in who are, like, especially the people in the lower classes, they will what they can do is they have somebody to look up to. They can work for them, and they can climb up the ladder to the top in a capitalistic society versus in the social society, you are bounded by social restrictions of the people and the system around a social system, and therefore you cannot, I mean, you're bounded by so many restrictions, and therefore you cannot climb up the ladder, and therefore, in a capitalist society, you have more, let's say, the idea of, you can achieve what you want. Is more in American societies. Okay, now in sort of the libertarian view of America, it's a political party. By the way, just so you guys, especially for the people outside of U.S. and outside of the West, not sure, it's also a political side. Just like we have the left wing and the right wing. I'm from India, by the way, and there doesn't exist a libertarian party in India, at least as of yet. So, I mean, for obvious reasons, it's in the East. But anyway, so the idea of sort of the libertarian is that you are in control of your own destiny. In Europe, this is part of some census that I read somewhere on the internet, that even though, yes, atheism is more prevalent in the European societies than in American societies, Europeans believe that there are things outside of your control. More Europeans believe that there are things outside of your control than the Americans. Now, Americans actually believe that, I mean, I'm talking about, yes, not obviously I'm generalizing this. We're talking about the libertarians. The libertarians generally believe that you are in control of your own destiny. So what that means is if anything happens to you, that's your fault. Okay, society isn't responsible for that. Now, in a capitalistic society, let's say, for example, you have if you have suppression of minorities or anything like that, that's because you weren't worthy of, let's say, doing anything like that. Or there's not just suppression or oppression, but there are so many things that happen in a society. There's so many activities. Therefore, the idea of libertarian is that you are in control, and therefore you're in control, and you should be responsible for whatever happens in your life. And that's sort of okay. Now you would ask, why is that appealing? Well, when I say that you are in control of whatever you can do, isn't that interesting? Yes, it's difficult. I mean, there are things that have that, I mean, there are bad moments in our lives, but still, when in a capitalistic society, if you are in control, because you are free, because the idea is that the freer the market, the freer the people. And you would say, why is free or liberty sort of criticized? And the reason is there's a consequence or a price that you pay for your liberty. And the price you pay is, if you get too free, there is a loss of meaning or structure as you keep progressing. Now, let's say, for example, you're free in a society, okay? Let's say you go, I'm by the way, don't make any immediate judgments, because I'm also going to talk about the Eastern society system in a minute. But in a capitalist, let's say in a free society, one of the problems, let's say generally, not just in the free society but anywhere, like if you're too free, like if you're always lonely in a place, and you're free to do whatever the hell you want, and you're not bounded by any responsibility, no constraints, like you have no schedule, there is no routine, like you're just doing whatever the hell you want every day. You wake up and you do whatever the hell you want. One of the consequences of the price you pay for that is that when you wake up, okay, you want to achieve, let's say you want to create a company, so, and you want the company to, let's say, one day make $1 million, and one day the company makes $1 million, and after that, that's it. So you got to the destination, and now life seems pointless because you achieved it, and now it looks like as though my life is over, right? So the consequence that you pay for loss of meaning, or the loss of, let's say, of ideals, is that you're bounded by sort of no constraints. So constraints are important. Now constraints can be anything. Can be because of religion, can be because of your work, your ethics, your values, whatever you want to bring it, you can bring it. Now these constraints are important in addition to liberties, and that's why there are libertarians who believe in anarchy. Anarchy are basically like is a system where people believe that there shouldn't be no governments. People should be allowed to do whatever the hell they want to do, those are basically anarchists. Now you will also see the if you go to the East. Now one of the things that people criticize the East of the collective society is that you do not have the right to do whatever you want. Okay, but the benefit that you have out of a constrained society is stability, and that's the. If you go to the Europe, you will find that there is social welfare systems. Now, by the way, I lived in Sweden, where yes, the welfare system is quite strong here, and this is quite a balance between. This is a balance between individualistic society and collective society. So there's also confusion that on whether or not Europe is a collective society or individualistic society. Europe is very much an individualistic societies, but they are slightly different from the American individualism. I hope this video helps, and I will talk more about these concepts in another video. We'll progress this discussion in another video. I hope this video helps. Until then, guys, I shall see you guys in another video very soon. Subscribe to this channel if you like this video, and I shall see you guys in another video very soon.